Morning. There was a little surprise rain shower first thing this morning. You can see here on the bare ground that it's not super wet. Probably a little sticky on top, not much more than that. And no, this is not corn that's super far behind. It's one of my dad's mini sweet corn patches. So it's planted a little bit later. That way we can spread out all of our delicious sweet corn. It's not all ready at one time. There was 2/10 of an inch of rain in here. Looks like my dad beat me to the gauge and has already dumped it. So you're just gonna have to take my word for it.
2/10 of an inch of rain is very negligible, all things considered. However, it has not rained here in 4 to 5 weeks, so that is better than no tenths of an inch of rain.
This rain ought to perk everything up for about 24 hours.
You know, unproductive just isn't the right word. Let's call it a creative learning opportunity for you guys that also allows me to further procrastinate on some maintenance I need to do. Before I dive into my actual work today, I wanted to showcase to you all the results of our herbicide programs up to this point for both corn and soybeans, starting with corn. This field of corn is south of the main farm about a mile. It is some very stress-prone dirt if it doesn't rain. It's the kind of soil where you really need to get pretty consistent moisture if you want to produce a tremendous crop. It's never one of our highest yielding ones, though it can yield with the best of them as long as it rains enough. The issue with this farm is because it's light a lot of times on this south end in particular with the trees, we have issues with solid stands of both corn and soybeans, ultimately resulting in some pretty heavy weed pressure. I came out here to spray our Acuron GT. There were areas along the south end that were a literal carpet of water hemp under the corn. And look at it now. Other than a stray water hemp here and there that probably just didn't get enough coverage because there was such a heavy population underneath the corn rows, there is nothing left out here. It is a literal weed wasteland. The Acuron GT, mainly the Callisto and Bicyclopyrone, just torched every weed out here. You can see the remains of a lot of grasses and other broadleafs, all this dried up plant material. It definitely obliterated anything growing out here other than the corn. The real question is it going to have enough residual firepower to carry us to the finish line? Because this light ground, unless it starts getting consistent rainfalls, is going to struggle to canopy. Out in the long rows, it's not going to be an issue because the corn's nice and healthy. The canopy of the leaves covering all the photosynthetic area above the ground should choke the rest of the weeds out if they even emerge. Before we get too far into the action, I wanted to take a very quick moment to thank the sponsor of today's video, AG1. For those of you watching the video right now that don't even know what AG1 is, I'll fill you in real quick. It is a daily foundational nutritional supplement that helps support whole body health. If any of you watching are like I and want to look, feel, and perform your best every single day, chances are you probably need a little supplemental support to fill in a gap or two in your diet. Typically, to do so, you need to consume multiple different health nutritional products. Personally, consuming all those different products is for the birds. I wake up every single morning, first thing, and drink 1 serving of AG1 to cover all of those bases. I don't have to take a million different vitamins, minerals, probiotics, prebiotics, every single one of those products that I could possibly need to support the performance and feelings of my body are right here in this 1 serving. Assuming I don't spill that 1 serving on the ground, there we go. 1 serving mixed up in 8 to maybe 12 ounces of cold water. You put it down the pipe first thing, and you're good to go for the day. The best part is that it actually tastes pretty darn good. I'm making a mess. Stop your clocks. Was that even 60 seconds right there? I don't think so. I've personally been taking AG1 for over a year now. My main goals in consuming it are mostly to promote gut health, because I think that's extremely important, and a variety of other things, help with stress, energy, focus, everything that I think can make my life of a higher quality, especially given a lot of the struggles both physically and mentally dealing with the farm every day. And sometimes you guys on YouTube don't help. If you are looking to try something new and help improve the general health and wellness of your life, maybe give AG1 a shot. It's made with the highest quality ingredients, and like I've mentioned a million times, it gives your body everything it needs to help conquer every single day with ease. Head over to drinkag1.com/aTrippyFarmer to get started on an order today. If you follow that link, you will get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 and K2, as well as 5 free travel packs. Highly recommend this product. I've been using it myself for over a year. It's great, replaces many different things. Go check it out, drinkag1.com/aTrippyFarmer. Thanks again to AG1 for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back to the action.
Okay, we looked at some high weed pressure cornfields that we sprayed the Acuron GT on 3 weeks ago. Now let's look at some XtendFlex soybeans that we sprayed Liberty and Roundup on just 5 days ago. This is actually the first field I sprayed for post-emergent soybean herbicide. We ran the 36 ounces of Liberty, 32 ounces of Roundup, and the 2 ounces of Zidua SC to give us some prolonged residual control, because we may still have a week to 10 days before these soybeans close the row like most of our corn has and canopy out or shade out all of the weeds underneath. The area in particular I'm in is a field edge and corner, typically higher pressure areas, especially if you struggle with coverage in corn or even soybeans in years prior. A few outbreaks of water hemp can lead to years of problems, and that's kind of what you see here in this area. The rest of the field, as I sprayed it, was relatively clean. A few stray water hemp had made it through. However, this area right here was more of a troublesome spot, and some of these water hemp were actually pretty healthy in size. Those are way over the 4 inches where you want to spray them. That big one right there is probably every bit of 9 to 10 inches tall. Remember when I talked about Liberty, it was entirely about coverage because it is a contact killer. That's why we used the 20 gallons an acre and applied it in as fine as a droplet size as possible. As I said, it's been 5 days since the Liberty was applied on this. Typically, leaf symptoms of Liberty application show up within 2 to 3 days. You'll know within 7 days whether or not the plants are actually going to die. Obviously, temperature affects that. The warmer it is and the more sunlight, the quicker the plants are growing. The quicker they're growing, the faster they will photosynthesize and ultimately kill themselves by trying to process that glufosinate, which is essentially a photosynthetic toxin. This area on the field edge here is pretty darn thick, though it looks like every water hemp here got a healthy dose of the glufosinate. I'll check back in on this one here in another 5 or 6 days and see what these look like. For the most part, though, I think the Liberty is going to kill a lot of these weeds. However, you can never count out a water hemp. I've seen chemicals take water hemp all the way to the ground, and they somehow grow back out of it like a phoenix from the ashes. It's scary how competitive this weed is. That's also why we put that Zidua SC in, the extra 2 ounces. It held back a majority of this water hemp in the rest of our fields for a very long time. I mean, we got 5 or 6 weeks of quality coverage out of it. If we don't get to canopy before we get another really good rain, could germinate more seedlings in the ground. And if we don't have something to hold it back, we're going to have to spend the money to come out here again and spray another pass of Liberty to clean up whatever's left over. The HPPD inhibitors that we spray in our cornfields typically cause bleaching as the primary symptom. The Liberty kind of bronzes the leaves, causes some chlorosis that ultimately kills off all the tissue. If you come back out here in a handful of days, most of these weeds will literally just be crispy.
Crispy is how I prefer my water hemp.
You know, it's been long enough that I ought to go drive back to the backside of this field where I unfolded and started spraying the soybeans for the first time since cleaning everything out from spraying corn herbicides and see whether or not we burnt any beans. It may be too early to tell. I'm not seeing anything that wasn't already there. There are a few stripes here, but I think that has something to do with some type of carryover from last year's corn herbicide, because that was there before I sprayed this field. The beans as a whole may have a little bit of a slight speckling or bronzing going on because that group 15 Zidua we did spray on will be on some of the leaves as I spray the field. The soybeans do have to process that. They're not genetically resistant to it, they're just naturally metabolically tolerant. So it may hurt them a tiny bit just to accomplish getting a residual down on the ground. The point I'm trying to make is that I think I successfully cleaned everything out because I did not smoke our beans.
For those of you who have never seen what a contaminated sprayer with corn herbicide residual remains in the plumbing can do to a soybean field, it'll smoke the beans until those sections get enough fresh water and product through them that it's diluted and it's not going to hurt the beans anymore. I see it happen time and time again, and the jury's still out. Those could show symptoms here in another couple days. For now, though, it does look like I did a good job. And it happens. You're not always going to get every nook and cranny. So if you burn some beans, you burn some beans. That's just the cost of doing business.
Okay, one last stop here. Here is a field of Enlist soybeans that we sprayed the Enlist or 2,4-D and clethodim on less than 24 hours ago. And the fun part about the growth regulator herbicides is that they act fairly quickly and their symptomology is very obvious. You can see weeds start to croak over within 4 or 5 hours. I've even actually seen them on a hot day start to bend over within an hour of them being sprayed. But you won't actually know whether or not they're going to die for probably 3 days, 4 days. Sometimes they stay green and just don't grow anymore. Again, this field, just like the other one, for the most part it's clean. There's a few spots here and there where there's a little bit higher pressure, especially along the edge here. I don't know if I didn't hang over far enough with that Zidua up front pre-plant, or if this is just an area where we struggle because there's a ditch there. You get a lot of weeds coming in. I'm not entirely sure. Big chunk of button weeds or velvet leaf right here. Not hard to kill, though very persistent, and I see it in a lot of fields. Glyphosate will toast that, though we didn't have glyphosate in this mixture. The 2,4-D or the Enlist is actually what's carrying the weight here, and it's fairly evident that that is what's doing it because it is the typical growth regulator symptomology, twisting of the plant, very violently actually. The growth regulator herbicides act very differently than the two herbicides I showed you previously, the Liberty on the soybeans and the HPPD inhibitors on the corn. It basically causes violent plant growth that kills the plant. Grows it to death is almost quite literally what it does. Growth regulators are pretty selective, only on broadleafs. They won't harm grass. Corn is sensitive to the growth regulator herbicides if they're not safened at all. It can become very brittle because it causes them to grow quicker, although there's really no net positive there. That's why you don't want to get 2,4-D or dicamba on your corn. In this mess of button weeds right here, there is actually a stray water hemp or two. You can see the water hemp's twisted up. I have seen water hemp survive application by growth regulators, though chances are that anything in this bundle right here is probably going to die other than the soybeans.
I mentioned this in the previous video when I was out spraying this farm. Enlist, which is the labeled chemistry for applying on Enlist soybeans, is literally 2,4-D. If you knew what 2,4-D smelled like, that's what this field smells like right now. There's no different chemistry out here. It is literally 2,4-D. If you wanted to break the law and spray off label, you could technically spray generic 2,4-D. If you wanted to clean up your field edges, you could technically use generic 2,4-D. Though, like I said, that would not be legal, so don't do that.
One last thing I wanted to show you was my sprayer path. I did a pretty aggressive angle on these. It was not super fun to spray them because when you do an angle like this, you get a lot of small corners that you have to keep turning back to spray. If I was setting my line again, I wouldn't go as steep, but the work's done here. I wanted you guys to see the sprayer tracks. Obviously, anywhere the main tire weight went across is probably dead, though the neighboring plants should readily grow into that gap as they continue to vegetate. That is the goal. Typically, once the field is fully canopied, if there's any area you're going to have weed pressure, it's where the tires ran. That Hagie does have the rear spray nozzles behind each tire to help put product behind there, but historically, regardless of what you do, this is typically where you're going to see more weeds. It's just because you're going to leave a gap there. There's nothing you can do about it, and anytime you give water hemp an opportunity to grow, it's going to grow. It's pretty good at it.
Okay, I think we've wasted enough time and the sun's finally back out, so let's get started on our actual work for the day, starting with the Hagie. I need to grease it, but to grease the boom, I need to unfold it, which involves moving the Hagie, and it's parked at the fuel tank, so I might as well top off the fuel before I move it.
We used 74 gallons of diesel fuel yesterday because I started with a full tank and I just refilled to full. We look at John Deere Operations Center for application data. We sprayed 840 acres of Enlist. We also sprayed the Enlist with ENC Flex, which shows 34 acres. Lastly, we had the Enlist and Orbix. So altogether, we had about 900 acres applied on that 74 gallons. It's pretty good. Let's do the math. 74 divided by 900. 0.08 gallons per acre, including road travel and idling. That's phenomenal fuel efficiency. a lot better than last time I calculated it.
Why would you buy a Prius when you can buy a Hagee? I mean, they're practically the same thing, right?
I did read a comment somewhere, I don't know if it was on Twitter or on YouTube, that the fat floater tires actually burn a lot more fuel than these skinny row crop tires, which could explain the stark difference since last time we calculated, because my last calculation came out to 0.15 gallons per acre, but I did have the floaters on. The back suspension seems to use less grease than the front, which would make sense because the front takes the brunt of any obstacle in the field it's crossing. They've literally thought of it all. There's even a grease gun holder on this. That's what we need to pull our tanker. I had the exposure settings messed up on the camera. If you couldn't tell, that was a nice, shiny black Peterbilt. I don't think I've cleaned out my trash up to this point in the season yet out of the cab, so I'm gonna do that because it's getting a little cumbersome in there. Don't see any reason to keep these jugs. Doesn't look like they're really too excited to leave. All right, all the trash and aluminum cans are finally out of here. It's nice and cozy. Looks like I've got 3 nozzle bodies left, which is pretty sad because pretty sure at one point in time I had 15 brand new ones. Changed a lot of those either from them just failing on their own or me slamming the boom on the ground on occasion. These are all the loose tips right here that I pulled off of broken nozzle bodies. Here are a bunch of extra nozzles and caps if I need them, as well as a few miscellaneous supplies. I don't exactly have a better place to keep my big wrenches and the pipe wrench. This seems like the lesser of two evils up here, but the toolbox on the back is not big enough for these. It's not really a huge deal to have them on the floor other than the safety hazard, I guess, because this cab is rather spacious. On to the next thing. Let's get this into some nice open space so we can unfold it and grease up the boom. I'm sure it's long overdue. Actually, probably not. I greased it before I started spraying corn, so it's got maybe 40, 50 hours on it. Okay, everything on the sprayer is greased except for this main pivot in here. I can't seem to get that unless the sprayer is folded up. I've yet to figure out the perfect position to grease this without having to get in and adjust everything. You know, like park it in a way where the booms are in the spot where you can reach every single thing. I think I almost need to unfold the winglets and then bring the whole wing back, and I might be able to get that. Obviously, I don't have the room to do that here, so this is probably the best we're going to get for now. I also noticed that this little section of the front wet boom is angled backwards a little bit. We'll just throw the pipe wrench on it and twist it a little bit. Either I hit something or it's just kind of rode up with wear. Usually these are pretty pliable in the mount. There we go. Pipe wrenches and zip ties. Probably my 2 most used things on the sprayer so far. And curse words. Those are in there somewhere too. I'm changing hats first thing this morning. I was going to finish spraying today since all the moisture was well off of the fields, but my tanker driver, who also happens to drive the grain trailer, Michael Jeff, had a doctor's appointment. So I figured I'd run the grain trailer for a little bit, help finish up our last bin of soybeans. That way tomorrow we can just focus on finishing up spraying. There's no rain in the forecast, so it's not like it's really a concern of being rained out. Although they are calling for at least an inch of rain on Sunday, but that's 3 or 4 days from now. I hope we get that rain. It's not going to slow me down much till the end of the week. well so far. For some reason, this dinky little sweep auger is not wanting to turn on. Chris and Dad are outside, so we're going to try switching drop cords. Sometimes it doesn't really want to start up too quickly first thing in the morning. I can kind of empathize with that personally, but it should be going after a little jump start and it's not going, so try a different cord. Quick update. Dad and I are gonna go see if we got another small sweeper like that to put in there. I don't know if we burnt this other one up or what the deal is.
The problem with this, it's long and you have to raise it up.
Oh, we'll do a better job than the other one. The other thing's about worn out. Okay, we've secured the other miniature sweep auger. Now I get to do the fun job of taking the one in the bin out and bringing this new one in. Fortunately, they're pretty light. Whew, boy, am I glad to have that one done. That's probably the hardest one we have remaining. The rest are fairly easy. They're bigger bins. Once you get the sweep in, although heavy, it's not really that much legwork from there. I bought this full-face respirator with intentions of using inside my tanker when I wash the chemical out of it between corn, soybeans, and sensitive soybean chemistries. I did use that, but I broke my smaller, just nose and mouth respirator. Some of the filters kind of broke off. I need to get new ones. So I was just using this for now. The one positive to this is that it keeps the dust out of your eyes. Those of you who've ever swept out a grain bin know at the end of the day, if you've got sensitive dry eyes, you'll definitely feel it all night until you wake up the next morning and you're refreshed and moisturized. This is a good mask. It's definitely hard to itch sweat if it's on your cheeks, which happens quite a bit. Other than that though, I'm done here. Time to move over to the next corn bin and I'm gonna find something else to do.
And you want to use, when you do it, you want to use the far north one. It's got more pressure, and I don't know what the deal is. Because they've got different hoses on them. It messes them up, I think.
Everything's moved over to the south corn bin. It's about lunchtime, so I'm gonna go take a break and pass the torch on to Jeff when he shows back up. Loaded bean truck right now, and then these two are corn. This old aluminum bin is empty. We haven't used it in a long time. It's only worth about scrap metal price. Not worth storing anything in. It's kind of a pain. Yeah, Chris says the aluminum's worth a lot of money, but storing stuff in it is not worth the trouble. The other day, Dad and I finally got some time to hook up the old money printer, our batwing mower. For those of you who are not familiar with farming and mowing roadsides, there's actually nothing profitable about this thing. If anything, it's just a money burner, but you gotta keep those roadsides looking good for the neighbors or something like that. Dad and I already checked all 4 gearboxes on it. We're not gonna sharpen the blades. This R15 mower is only 1 year old. They should be fine enough to run. I'm not gonna say they couldn't use a little sharpening, but we're gonna run it and see how it does. The only thing left to do is grease all of the grease zerks on here. There's a handful on the back wheels, handful on the wing folds, and then of course your drive shafts all have some as well. So I'm gonna get started on that real quick, and then we may actually go mow a little bit. Alrighty, we got the batwing mower all greased up. Took me about 5 minutes to do everything, and then I slid off the main PTO shaft cover to grease underneath it and the front stuff that was already hooked up. And that part took me about 45 minutes to get back together. It's the way these projects go. 95% of it goes fast, and the last 5% is what takes all the time. The outside skids are touching the concrete. Assuming this is a level surface, we may throw another stop in the main lift cylinder and get that off the ground. We want at least a little bit of a gap, or that'll start to drag up there as we mow. It almost looks like it's too high off the ground now. I might take one of those double stops out and put another single stop in. I think I'll be trading 2 inches for 1 inch. That should get us pretty close to home. Go to our other storage rack. This is really a two-hand job. This ain't exactly true set tillage. It does the job though. Yeah, I didn't really think that one through. That put us exactly where we were before. I'm just gonna run it. I'll ease it off the ground a little bit when I put it down. Since we did all this maintenance, we might as well at least take it to a ditch and see if it's gonna mow. Just missed the seat tenders. Not really a whole lot to this. You just unfold the mower, turn it on, assuming it's not broken, speed her up, put her down in the ditch, and start mowing. If you're doing it right, it should look something like this. The reason the batwing mowers are hinged, other than adding width to them that folds up and transports down the road, is they can also kind of hug ditch bottoms really well. They form that V and mow close to the ground. Oh no, we got a little corn there. It's really not a bad job. My only suggestion is that you get a good night's sleep before you come around the batwing, because you may fall asleep if you don't. It looks like I may need to have a talk with the sprayer guy. He killed half the ditch with the corn herbicide. Alrighty folks, that's going to be it for me today. Currently, my plan tomorrow is to come out first thing, finish spraying the last little chunk of Enlist soybeans I have, get that all wrapped up, and then we'll move on to other maintenance things. Obviously, we still need to finish hauling the rest of our grain. We're getting down to less and less bins, so that really is kind of a short list at this point in time. I do need to start thinking about cleaning up the planters, getting the field cultivators parked inside, and a few other things. We'll worry about that in the next episode. For now, let's just wish that it rains here in the next couple of days. There's a big forecasted rain on Sunday, which is 3 or 4 days from now. If that comes to fruition, it really could be a game changer for the top end yield potential of our crop. It's far from in trouble, although we are quickly approaching that cliff that starts to drop off the yield if it stays dry for much longer. Either way, that's going to be it for me. I greatly appreciate every single one of you continuing to tune in and support the channel. Your viewership means the world to me. I'll catch you all in the next episode. Until then, make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!